is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wilds, Chris Broussard is with us on a Monday morning. Hey, coming up, will the Cowboys now sign Dak Prescott to a long-term deal? Have you seen the new and, shall we say, improved Rob Gronkowski? And will the Patriots struggle now that Tom Brady is no longer, forget on the field, in the locker room? We have those stories and more coming up over the next hour, but we are starting this morning's show with some disturbing news. NASCAR announcing last night that a noose was found in driver Bubba Wallace's garage at Talladega Superspeedway in Lincoln, Alabama on Sunday. Bubba has been outspoken about the Black Lives Matter movement the last couple of weeks. He did call on NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag. Late last night, he released the following statement. He said, in part, today's despicable act of racism and hatred leaves me incredibly saddened and serves as a painful reminder of how much further we have to go as a society and how persistent we must be in the fight against racism. Over the last several weeks, I've been overwhelmed by the support from people across the NASCAR industry, including other drivers and team members in the garage. Together, our sport has made a commitment to driving real change and championing a community that is accepting and welcoming of everyone. Nothing is more important, and we will not be deterred by the reprehensible actions of those who seek to spread hate. As my mother told me today, they are just trying to scare you. This will not break me. I will not give in, nor will I back down. I will continue to proudly stand for what I believe in. Now, NASCAR also released a statement. They said, quote, late this afternoon, NASCAR was made aware that a noose was found in the garage stall of the 43 team. We are angry and outraged and cannot state strongly enough how seriously we take this heinous act. We have launched an immediate investigation and will do everything we can to identify the person or persons responsible and eliminate them from the sport. As we have stated unequivocally, there is no place for racism in NASCAR, and this act only strengthens our resolve to make the sport open and welcoming to all. Bubba Wallace receiving a lot of support on social media. This from LeBron James, sickening. Bubba Wallace, my brother, no, you don't stand alone. I'm right here with you, as well as every other athlete. I just want to continue to say how proud I am of you for continuing to take a stand for change here in America and sports. NASCAR, I salute you as well. So there's a lot to get to here. Nick, I want to start with you and first get your reaction to what was said and what happened yesterday.
Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like you saw the bubbling lead up to this in the reaction from some NASCAR fans to the fact that they weren't able to fly proudly their traitor flag any longer by the plane that flew over the stadium with the Confederate flag saying defund NASCAR, with the little mini rally outside of Talladega of folks proudly flying the Confederate battle flag. And I know Wilds is going to probably talk more about the Bubba Wallace and NASCAR piece of this. I'm going to use my time here because if anything good can come of this, it will be if people better know their history and the history of that noose and the history of lynching in America. Emmett Till, who probably is the most well-known victim of lynching in America, if he had not been lynched, he'd be 78 years old today. Carolyn Bryant, the woman who lied about Emmett Till doing something to her that set that entire process in motion, is still alive to this day. The trial for the people who murdered Emmett Till, even though they had admitted to it to Life magazine when they were found not guilty, happened right around the time Bill Russell was being drafted by the Celtics. I say all that to say this. This is not ancient history. And in some ways, this is not even history. Just in the last 10 days here in New York City, at Van Cortlandt Park and at Marcus Garvey Park, a couple blocks from where I live, nooses were found hanging in trees. The police declined to investigate the one at Van Cortlandt for reasons I don't understand. We'll see what happens at Marcus Garvey. Since George Floyd was murdered on May 25th, there have been 6 instances nationwide of people of color being found hanging from trees in this country. Now, we don't know what happened to all of those people, but it sure seems to be a horrifying trend over the last 30 days. And so what I think you are seeing, and what you saw yesterday and this weekend, as far as the Confederate flag and then the noose being hung in Bubba Wallace's locker, is folks pushing back for something that matters an immense amount to them. And that is the ability to continue being racist. It is the ability to have their way of life, which so much of it is tied to there is a group less than I am. No matter how poor, uneducated, no matter my level of success or lack of success, at least I'm white and you're not. And the fact that you even have NASCAR now saying, we must evolve, it is terrifying to those people. And so they are lashing out. And so it is incumbent on all of us to stay all the more vigilant, because as the world ekes towards progress, those that are pulling against it are going to pull with all their might, and they're going to do it in increasingly scary ways. And to me, that's what the noose in Bubba Wallace's locker represented, Wilds.
Well said, Nick. I wanted to talk about responsibility. I think NASCAR and law enforcement have a responsibility to find this person. NASCAR said they were going to eliminate them from the sport. Law enforcement should prosecute them to the utmost extent of the law. NASCAR drivers, teams, and fans continue the march towards progress. Then you saw LeBron talk about all athletes standing with Bubba Wallace. I think sports fans have a responsibility. Sports fans have a responsibility to support Bubba Wallace. And I think we've seen Alvin Kamara do this. Alvin Kamara, in response to NASCAR banning the Confederate flag, said, "When's the next race?" And his Twitter feed since then has been filled with him going to the race. He went to the race in Miami. He's wearing Bubba Wallace gear. And NASCAR made a new fan with Alvin Kamara. I think, look, I didn't grow up a NASCAR fan. I grew up in Northeast. It's not part of, the sporting world. And I know it's a big sport. And I'm like, oh, I think if you're like me, you have a responsibility to support Bubba Wallace. And if you look at everyone else you've been a fan of since you were a little kid to now, what do you look for in someone that you support, someone that you're a fan of? Bravery, courage, perseverance. That's all there with Bubba Wallace. And he said in his statement, Jenna, that he was overwhelmed by the support that he's received. And I think that as sports fans, the larger sport fan community, that we should make that support tenfold. And if you're looking for someone to root for, you found him in Bubba Wallace, and he's racing today at 3 o'clock, I think. And he's earned a fan in me, and I hope that millions of other people will support Bubba Wallace too.
Really well said, Kevin. I think you make a very good point. Broussard, Nick said this might have been a bubbling up of events that have happened over the course of the last couple of weeks. I wonder whether what happened last night surprised you. Were you surprised when you woke up this morning and you read about this?
No, not at all. In fact, I'd be surprised if many, if not any, African Americans were surprised. When you grow up black in this country, you get used to things like this, and obviously much worse happening. And Bubba Wallace is right. This won't break him. It won't break us. We've seen worse than this, and we'll continue to thrive. But to Nick's point, look, as this country tears down symbols and images of white supremacy, there are a lot of whites who behind closed doors are upset and seething. They may smile in public, they may be quiet in public, but privately they are angry because, as Nick said, this is what their life has been about. And this is painful for all Americans who love their country to admit. But these feelings are deep-seated because this country was not founded on freedom. It was not founded on Christianity. It was founded on racism and white supremacy. It's in the very fabric of the nation. So a lot of whites can't even fathom not living in that. They don't want equality. They want white superiority, which is the position they've been placed in for the last 400 years. And I believe to combat this, kind of along the lines of what Kevin was saying, whites who want equality and who are against racism must combat it not only publicly, but privately. Because I'm almost certain that whoever did put this noose up in Bubba Wallace's garage didn't do it alone. They probably told other whites. They probably joked about it with other whites. And nobody came strong enough to say, you cannot do this. Growing up, and contrary to what Nick said, I'm not that old, okay? He jokes I'm not that old, okay? But when I was growing up, and sometimes I would be around whites who didn't know I was black. And I heard how they talked about blacks in disparaging ways. I heard them use the N-word. These are people who are maybe running corporations now, who are in charge of hiring and firing, who may be politicians. They're prominent people within society, and these are their attitudes. It's not just 70 and 80-year-olds who are about to die off. It's not just people in the South. Nick mentioned, these nooses have been found in New York. People were lynched recently, blacks in California. And so these are, I say privately, whites have to be just as anti-racist as they are publicly.
And Broussard, to the point of, are you surprised? Your point that black Americans don't have the luxury of being surprised about something like this, I think is a great one. But what's also true is that if you know our country's history, I don't know how you could be surprised. There's an amazing book. I actually have it with me. I'm going to show it to you guys. It's called At the Hands of Persons Unknown. It is the best